Welcome to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today, I'm going to be talking to Ellie Stone. She is the founder and CEO of The Inspired Leader, and she's here to talk to us a little bit about her entrepreneurial journey and then also talk about what it takes to be a strong leader in today's economy and in today's world. And so welcome to the show today, Ellie.
Thanks, Lance. It's so great to be here. It's so great to have made this connection with you, and I'm really excited to have this conversation. I think it's going to be enlightening.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And so, yeah, we made this connection a few weeks ago, actually at your restaurant. So you're one of the owners of the Original Joe's franchise or a number of franchises here in the Edmonton region. Talk to me a little bit about, I guess, the beginnings, because I think that's the beginnings of your entrepreneurial journey, right? Was with the Original Joe's franchise.
It is, yeah. And I think in my early years, I didn't think I would ever be an entrepreneur. I didn't know that I had that level of risk within me. And I think a lot of it was my husband, who had a vision to own a restaurant by the time he was 25. And I thought he was a little crazy at the time. We were very young, but we did it. We did it together, and that ended up being Original Joe's and buying into that partnership. So we were part of basically from the grassroots ground up Original Joe's concept here in Edmonton, and kind of expanded around northern Alberta. So there have been points that we oversaw up to 17 restaurants. Right now we're at 12. So it's a pretty crazy life. And yeah, those early years of building those restaurants were really crazy times. Like I said, we were 23 when we bought into the restaurant. So young little pups, didn't have any money. And we had to go to my husband, Chris's parents and borrow, I can't remember, $25,000 or something, which was big at that time.
Yeah.
And we had to pay them back like a mortgage payment. And I remember thinking, we have just like rolled the dice on everything. Like, I don't know how we're going to buy a house and all of these things. And it was a grind. I'm not going to lie. In those early years, we sat on the floor and we ate Kraft mac and cheese, and we didn't go out, and we worked really hard to build businesses that were successful. And it definitely didn't start out that way, because Joe's is a very grassroots type concept. And the marketing is basically word of mouth.
Okay.
And so to build these restaurants and get them vibing and get those regulars and those people coming in, that took a lot of work on our end and a lot of learnings. So yeah, it was a crazy adventure for sure.
Well, and I think you touch on a really interesting point, right? Because a lot of times when people are buying into franchises, they're buying into, well, the system, which I would imagine you would have gotten that, but they're also buying into the brand awareness. And so when you're in the early days of a franchise that's coming in, it's an unknown commodity. It doesn't have that brand strength that other, more popular or established, I guess I should say, not popular, but established franchises would have. And so you're having to build all that as if it's a brand new brand, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, it had some legs in Calgary, so it started down there. But Edmonton, I mean, when we bought in 102nd Ave was the only Original Joe's. So the downtown location, that was it. And then we opened Terwilliger, and it just kind of rolled from there. And the expansion was fast. It was fast and furious. Over like the next 10 years, I think, I can't even remember, we were talking about it, but it was almost like a part of opening 17 or 18 restaurants, plus like helping open franchise locations. We ended up kind of consulting to the franchise because they really liked our model and the way we were working within Original Joe's. So we would go help new franchisees open their locations as well. So it just got really diverse, and we got stretched very thin, very fast. So yeah, like really intense years. And probably in those years, I still wondered if entrepreneurialism was for me.
Yeah.
It was a lot of figuring it out, but it's so funny because now I'm like, oh no, I'm an entrepreneur through and through. Like that is how I live, right? And I love that, and I thrive on that. So it's so funny how that growth comes over time, right? And you really learn to lean into things.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if entrepreneurs at any point in their life, maybe the point in which they've sold off all of their businesses and they're just retired at that point, they feel comfortable probably saying, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, or was an entrepreneur, and this is what my life's mission or passion was. Because I know just the other week I was in the middle of all of the craziness of one day, you're looking around going, what the hell am I doing this for? Like, this is crazy. And so
Yep.
there's always that self-doubt that comes in, right? Especially when
Yeah.
you're in the massive growth mode that you would have been in for more than a decade. And so
Yeah.
what I'd love to learn a little bit, because I think this might pivot in a little bit into some of the stuff that you're doing now with the Inspired Leader, but I'm just really curious as to what do you think was the secret to your success, or not so much a secret because you were out there training other franchisees as well. And so what was it? What was the ingredients that you and your husband had that Original Joe's, the franchisor, just really appreciated? Like what was it that made you and your husband so successful, and something that was really a model within that franchise system?
Oh, this is a good question.
Yeah.
This was really important to us. So this was actually the only reason we did it, because the restaurant industry, it's known for unfair labor practices, grueling hours,
Yeah.
bad culture, things like that. And so when Chris and I bought in, we agreed if we were going to do it, we were going to change the model. And so that was it. So we went into it with a completely different frame of mind. We immediately focused on team culture and figuring out ways to create like a sense of belonging, a space of home for these people. And then we worked on all of the other things. So we found ways to, make sure that our organization was, how do I want to say this? We want to make sure that our organization was working, within the confines of, and I'm going to say this, I don't know if I should say this on the podcast. We were going to say that our organization was working within the confines of the law, because a lot of hospitality organizations they don't pay overtime. They don't pay holiday pay. Like, you don't get these things. And we work in this industry because we make really good money in tips, but then somehow these companies kind of get away with these unfair labor practices. And so that was a really big thing for us. And we really just wanted to create this place where people could come to work for us if it was for 6 months or 6 years and never forget the experience, And so it was just our mission. So we just set forth and we did that. We created values and a mission statement around it. And you can see the sign behind me that says people make the world beautiful. That's like the core of our culture. And we share that with everybody. And it's just been like an incredible experience. But the thing about that was that we never took our foot off the gas pedal. When it came to those things, it was so incredibly important to us. And then it snowballed, right? It was like, once you could get it going, once you could start sharing this with new team members and the communities around you, it not only brought team members in, there wasn't people want to work for us now because they know about these things.
Yeah.
And they hear about it in the industry.
Yeah.
But it also brought guests in, like customers, because they were like, whoa, your team is having such a great time. This is great. The vibe in here is awesome. We want to be around you guys, right? And so you can't fake that stuff. And we knew that right off the hop. And so we just poured our hearts into people and into connection and into relationship. And it paid off huge for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I also know, from what you were telling me when we first met, that this whole community aspect too. So the people part of your business is huge, but then also there's another big aspect that involves people outside of the business, outside of your customer base, that you guys do a tremendous amount of giving back and are really passionate about that. So tell me a little bit about that too, and how that came about.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool story. So, being part of a franchise, every year there's kind of marketing dollars that are accrued and you're allowed to spend them in certain ways. And we would end up with about $100,000 a year to market with, and we never really used it. We didn't really understand a lot about marketing. And so it was in 2016, my husband went out for a run and he came home to me and he said, I have this really crazy idea, Allie. And I was like, okay. And he had a lot of crazy ideas that I had to be like, okay, temper down, Chris. But he said, I think we should build a food truck. And I was like, I don't know, like it's been a lot building these brick and mortar restaurants. Like, what are we going to do with a food truck? And he said, well, I don't think we should sell anything out of it. I think it should be a community truck. And he's like, we have about $100,000 sitting in the bank right now. And if we can convince our partners to use this money for a food truck, we could create a truck that takes care of people who takes care of people.
Wow.
And it was wild. And when he said it to me, it was like silence in the room, and I was like, I don't even know what to say. Like, that's such a cool idea. It's like the climax of everything we've been working towards. And so it was actually that day we had a meeting. So we had a strategy meeting, and this was at the time we were working on our values and our mission. So this is like a pretty pivotal point in time that this all came out. And we went to our team, and Chris was like, I have this idea, and he kind of lays it on the table, and again, just like silence across the room. Like, I almost have goosebumps talking about it, because it was like, it's like one of those kind of moments you're like, did that actually happen? That was so crazy. And everybody was just like, yes, let's build this truck. And that was it. We built the truck. So we built the truck. It's called the Original Joe's Heart Cart. It's on the road today. It's on the road to White Court today. It's out all summer long. And the only reason we pull it out is because of our team. So our team will come to us with ideas and say, hey, maybe my mom has MS, and she's been in the hospital for the last 2 or 3 months. And the nurses and doctors have taken incredible care of her there. I'm wondering if we can pull out the heart card and take care of these people. And we're like, yes. When they come to us with these ideas, we pull it out. So it's at no cost to them. It's at no cost to the recipient. We just front the cost for everything, as long as that team member comes up with the idea and wants to come help us take care of people. So it's a pretty neat concept. And to be a part of one of those events, you don't ever forget it. Like, I have so many incredible memories, like laughing, crying, just, I don't know. I can't even begin to tell you the human connection that has happened on that heart card. It's pretty cool. So,
yeah. And this is something that I really stress when I'm talking to, government officials, when I'm talking to other people in economic development and so on. And I just stress so much the importance of small business, because we are the backbone of the economy. There's, the majority of the jobs the vast majority are driven by small businesses. But the biggest thing is that we're so embedded into the communities that when the community needs support, it's the small businesses that stand up and say, yes, we're here for you. We're here to help. And this is just taking it to a whole nother level, where it's not the community even asking. You guys are just right there. And it's driven by that culture that you have created. So I mean, it's just, that's taking culture, just to a whole nother level in terms of organizations and just how to foster something really special. So good on you guys. And on behalf of all the people who have benefited and all the people who will benefit from this, it's a great initiative. So thank you very much for doing that for our communities.
Yeah, of course. I don't think anybody in the organization would have it any other way.
Yeah.
It fills their hearts, right? I just don't think, it's perfect.
So cool. Okay. So tell me a little bit about working with your husband through all of this. So, sometimes it's difficult to leave the business, in the restaurant when you get home, I would suspect. I grew up in a family business, and I mean, the dinner table, it was always about business, or often, I guess, talking about business, and on the couch watching the ball game in the evening or whatever the case might be, there'd still be lots to talk about business. And so you could never escape it. How do you and your husband manage that relationship? So you have your work relationship, but then also your personal relationship. Or is it just all one? It's just, you can't separate the two.
Yeah. So one of the things I often talk about, and so through the years, I'm sure we'll get to talk about this, but through the years with Original Joe's, the last 10 years of my career there, I built leadership development programs. And one of the things that I identified is that work-life balance is a bit of an outdated concept. I like to say it's all about integration, and it's finding ways to weave all of these pieces together, because if we're struggling in one, we're probably going to struggle in the other. So it's about finding ways to kind of marry it all together. When we start to silo or try to silo, it creates a lot of frustration. And so we realized that pretty early on. We would come home and be like, okay, we're not going to talk about work today. And then it would be like halfway through dinner and be like, okay, so what do you think about? So we just couldn't, but we were so passionate about it. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm really lucky because my husband has this like beautiful feminine leadership side to him as well as the masculine. So he pulls this really great blend of both. And so I've always really connected to who he is as a leader. But there are definitely times where we would, have dinner and disagree and be yelling at each other across the table. And we'd have to really hash it out before we could leave the table, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to move forward in the organization the next day. Right. So we would really have to work through those things. And I honestly think working with him all these years, and a lot of people, are like, oh, I would never work with my spouse. That's crazy. And I get that. But I think it made our relationship really strong. I think it connected us on levels that I never could have imagined. It opened us up to each other in ways that we probably never thought we would have, when we met each other. And going on this journey together was just like a whole nother level of deepening our relationship. And so I always look back on that time and I'm so fond of it. I feel a little emotional actually talking about it, because 4 years ago, he suffered a brain injury. So he actually hasn't been able to work a day since then. And so it's been challenging without him. He was always like my person. He was always my person I went to for advice. He was and vice versa. And so when you lose that person that close to you in your career, it's like losing a piece of you, right? And I'm so glad he's still here and he's home, but it's not the same that way anymore, right? And so
huge
it was a really
support that
special
isn't
time.
that isn't there now, it sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A question for you, just with regard to that integration piece, because I haven't heard of a lot of people talking or coaching people on the integration. You hear a lot of people talking about trying to create that separation and that very siloed, and that's an older way of, I guess, looking at it, or an alternative way, I suppose. But it has kind of been the mainstream thinking about it. And myself, like, I don't know, I honestly don't know how people can do that. I don't get it, because what I do all day, and when you're building a business, you're thinking about things at all times. Like things are just happening where you're trying to process and brainstorm or deal with the problem at hand, because as an owner, you never really can turn that off. And so I didn't ever like that term, like, separating that work-life balance and stuff. It's like, there isn't a balance. It's just, this is who I am. And I enjoy this. I'm passionate about it. And I accept that I'm going to be thinking about things in the evenings and so on. It doesn't mean that I can't do other things. It can't, I can still function as somebody in a personal relationship as well. So when you're coaching people on that integration, do you mind sharing just like what you think to be one of the key things to get that right, or key few things that really make that a success?
Yeah, totally. I think that's a really important question, because again, it's like work-life balance, work-life integration. There's very strong opinions on both sides.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, Lance. I think that if we put things in boxes and create walls around them, again, like I already said, it creates frustration, but I think it also creates disconnection. And now that might be disconnection from people, that might be disconnection from your career or your relationship, but the biggest thing is it's disconnection from yourself. And I find like when we get disconnected from ourselves, we lose sense of our purpose, of where we want to be, what our mission is, what lights us up and like gets us out of bed every day. And so if we feel like we have to turn off the things that do that, it's probably not serving our life force or our energy. And so I always talk about that. And then on the flip side, there is a boundary to it too, right? Because you could integrate too far and you could be working all the time. And I know this happened to a lot of people through the pandemic, right? And they were all of a sudden working at home and didn't know when to turn it off and all of those things. So I get all of that. So we have to have boundaries around what that looks like for us. But I don't think we should put hard stops on when our passion starts and ends, or how that bleeds into the other pieces of our life, right? And
Yeah.
for me, it's like, I want to show up and live my life to the fullest. I want to be connected. I want to have great relationships with people. And I feel like that is just, it just bleeds into everything. So I don't know if that fully answers your question,
Well,
but
yeah, I really like what you were saying there in terms of that, like turning a piece of yourself off, because I think that's, again, entrepreneurs are wired slightly different in that respect. And well, maybe it's not wiring, it's just, yeah, they're chasing their passion. And so what they're building oftentimes is something that they have just this tremendous passion and desire to grow it, to see it thrive, or to reach some sort of goal that is sure a business goal. And so when other people look at it through the lenses of non-entrepreneurs, they don't get that it's like a non-entrepreneur's passion in some other area.
mhm,
They can't make that connection really, because for them, work is work oftentimes. And so for them, it's really clear cut. It's like, I do work so that I can do my passions, or I can do these other things. But what you were talking about, like this passion that you have for people and community, and giving back and making those connections and relationships and all of that stuff, that's all fed and served by what you're doing from a business standpoint. You built the business around that, those passions, and that's why then the leadership stuff has been so successful for you as well. And so I think that is the big disconnect. I think that people who look into entrepreneurs from the outside maybe don't quite get where that is actually a big part of who we are. Because I don't know about you, but I personally at times have had situations in which I've almost been offended by people's criticism of that blend within my life. And it's
mhm.
like, you know what, that's not fair, because you don't understand. This is part of who I am, and this is what I love, and this is there isn't, there's a lot of other things that I enjoy, but this is one of those things that I get to build the enjoyment within it. Now, one thing that I would love to hear is your experience being a woman entrepreneur and a woman business leader. So how does it, like, have you bumped into challenges in that regard? Because I know, like in the hospitality industry, the service industry, there's a ton of females who are in that industry, but not a lot, like a lot of other industries, that are leading the industry or leading the businesses and so that. So what's been your experience, and how have you managed around that?
Yeah, I was definitely the only woman around the table in
Yeah.
the beginning years with Original Joe's. I remember going to a meeting in Vegas with 16 people, and being the only woman, like a annual general meeting. And I was like, "Ah." And it's tough because it shouldn't be like that, but I got so uncomfortable because I was afraid that my opinion would be so different than my male counterparts that I actually didn't speak up in those years. And so I had to do a lot of work on my confidence and learn who I was as a leader, and learn what I could bring to the table and how I could bring a blend of that. Now, I said, luckily, my husband, Chris, he had this really great blend of feminine and masculine in his leadership style. So he was able to like really help me bring out who I was. I'm quite feminine in my leadership style, but I also understand the importance of masculine. And I think we have to bring both in. Um, I'm really soft hearted. I want to lead from the heart. I want to connect with people, but I need that masculine energy to keep me on track, to keep me getting the transactional things done, to keep me organized and do the things that like might totally fall off the back if I just spent all my time dreaming and being with people, right? So I think there's a really important piece to all of this. But yeah, it was definitely a journey, and I think that the experiences that we have in our life shape who we are as we grow. And when I was young, I was sexually abused. And so that was a really big thing for me too. And I think that really took my voice away in my early years. And I had to do a lot of work to recover that. And so now I think, looking back on those years, I don't regret any of it because I think it was the perfect scenario for me. It was the perfect place to be in to like really attack these things that were holding me back. And I had supportive, incredible male leaders around me that always encouraged me to grow. But I know that's not always the case for everybody. And so, I mean, that kind of brings me to why I do what I do now, in working with women professionals, helping them navigate their circumstances because they understand the challenges that can arise with that, right? So,
So what
yeah.
kind of advice then do you give women with that balance? Because, there's women, I mean, every individual takes a different approach to leadership, but I think that there is something to be said about really understanding the balance, whether you're a male or a female, of that masculine and feminine energy, because it's part of all of us. And if you try to manage just from one side or lead from one side of that, of your personality, I think that that's probably a recipe for failure. And so how do you encourage or help women or men, as you're doing your leadership training, to embrace both sides and create that little bit of a balance so you can draw on the strengths of both?
Mm-hmm. Well, I always talk about how we need both, and it's so important. So if you find yourself saying it's all about the masculine leadership, you need to kind of sit down and think about that and think about the ramifications. And if you find yourself saying it's all about feminine, you need to think about the ramifications of the ripple effect of that as well, because it's like, I would say it's like a giant swing of the pendulum, right? And we have to figure out how to get this pendulum to balance in the middle. And that's not always easy, especially coming out of the way the workforce has societally been seen, right? I don't know if that's a word, but seen in society over the years, right? And how women were meant to stay at home and take care of the kids. And now things are shifting and changing, and that can be hard for men. And I get that, right? So I think, especially with women, I think more so the conversation that I face personally in my coaching is, how do I show up as a woman in business in a very masculine driven industry? How do I get them to hear my opinion? How do I contribute to this team in a way that's impactful? How can I get them to see that there is something that I can bring to the table? Sometimes that's the issue, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that my advice usually is to create allies. I think when you're in a group setting, sometimes that masculine can be really strong, but if you create allies one-on-one with people in your organization and on your teams and start to explain your viewpoint and what you can bring to the table and how you can help soften maybe the edges of some of the things that are hard for the people that are working in the organization, people start to see that. I think going into a meeting and knocking the door down and being like, hey, you guys need to listen to me, it never really works, right? It doesn't work on either end of the spectrum. Yeah. So I always say it's all about, and for me, again, it's people and connections. It's all about allies. It's all about creating those connections. It's developing and deepening those relationships with the other leaders that you work with in that one-on-one setting, because once you spend that time with somebody, people don't ever forget it, right? And when we're with somebody, you and I today, like, we're deeply listening to each other, right? And so that's the power in the one-on-one. And we often think it has to be this big, grandiose thing, but these little micro connections or relationships or conversations, the compound effect of that is massive in an organization when you start to have them. So you have to be brave and you have to start taking first steps. And if you're a male in a completely feminine driven organizations, I would say the exact same tactic. It's just helping people see around the corner, right? See that there is another vantage point, that there's another lens through which we can see the world. And that is what makes the world beautiful, right? And so when we can see more of those, it opens our eyes to possibilities that we didn't even know existed.
Yeah, beautiful. So Ali, one of the things that we were talking about when I met you at your restaurant, at that networking event for the chamber, you had said, I'm transitioning out of the restaurant business. So There's you're selling the restaurants, and then you are pivoting into what really I think that your true passion and mission and really purpose is. It sounds like to me anyway, and that is leadership training. So the inspired leader. So tell me about this pivot. How difficult has it been to make this transition, or how easy has it been? Because it sounds like you were kind of you're taking what you were building and doing and implementing in Original Joe's. You're taking that now outside of Original Joe's. It sounds like a lot, but has that transition been difficult? And then I guess tell me a little bit more about the Inspired Leader and what you're trying to accomplish there.
Okay. Transition's so difficult.
Yeah.
I am leaving comfort for contribution. And I could have a really comfortable career in the restaurants for the rest of my life at this point. If I wanted, I know it well.
Yeah.
I'm excellent at it. I love it. I've had incredible experiences, and it's really hard to let that all go. So I get a little emotional when I start thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I feel called. I feel there's more that I have to offer. I feel there are so many leaders out there that could stand to just look at the world through a bit of a different lens, that could start to see leadership through the eyes of their people and connection and relationship, rather than this transactional, let's get things done, business is business. I think we're moving into a new consciousness, maybe would be a good word, in leadership, that I think is going to completely evolve the world in the next 20 years. And we're going to see incredible things happen. And I just feel called to be part of that movement. I think there is so much opportunity to help people live their lives in a different way that is so much more meaningful for them. And yeah, but I know it's going to be difficult. I know it's going to be challenging. It already has been very challenging for me, setting up a new business. I mean, you know this, things I have never done before because it was more automated in a franchise, and I'm banging my head off a wall and I'm working till 11 o'clock at night, all of these kinds of things to get this launched and get it to where I want it. But I don't ever question it, which is really interesting. So there's been a lot of days I've sat down after long days and been like, oh, and then I'm like, no, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So it's very interesting how I'm just very certain about it. And yeah, it's going to be incredible. So, I mean, the premise of the Inspired Leader is that I'm a coach. So I'm an international coaching certified International Coaching Federation certified coach. You can say that today. I have an ACC certification. So I have spent over 2 years already educating as a coach with like a worldwide recognized foundation. So I literally could work for any organization in the world at this point if I wanted, as a leadership or executive coach. And so coaching is part of what I do, but my real passion lies in this leadership development piece, and I love it. I have so many workshops and modules and things that I've developed over the years that have come out of my reading or my learning, and I've adapted and evolved into kind of my own philosophy and brought this kind of heart-centered leadership to it. And so I'm offering a 6-month leadership program, and I'm actually carrying it specifically towards women because I do feel like that is where I can make the greatest impact. And basically the women that sign up for this program are women that, you know, maybe struggle with this work-life integration thing, maybe struggle with overwhelm in their career, or finding ways to kind of bring it all together, or maybe they're even burnt out, right? And they're like, I don't even know if this is what I should be doing, because maybe they're going at it the wrong way. And so my goal is to give them like the skills, right, to get back to thriving, because I think they started that career for a reason and they loved it at one point, and I'm sure they can get back there. And if they can't, at least the program will enlighten them to see what's possible, because there's a world of possibilities out there. And create community. That's the other piece too. I really want to create community. That community within inside Original Joe's was incredible. changed my life. And so I really want to make that a big focus of what I do with the Inspired Leader as well. So that's
And,
my
and
current goals.
and this, it's going to be industry agnostic here. It's not just focused on the restaurant industry and leaders within that space. It's
Correct.
anybody who's in a
Yeah,
leadership role,
correct.
who's managing
Yeah.
people. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing, the backstory and getting into some really sensitive areas there, and then also some of the advice that you provided for our entrepreneurs, both females and males. And it is really interesting just to hear from somebody who has had that heart-centered leadership approach, and it just kind of came naturally, it sounds like, to you, and it's working. And so you just continue to kind of double down and build things around that. And so it's really interesting to see how now you're transitioning into something that's just focused on that. But that was really, by the sounds of things, one of the secrets to the success of the original Joe's franchises. Ease, I don't know
It's the
what.
secret sauce.
Yeah, right. So it's really neat that you identified that, and that you're like, you know what, I can just pull this piece out and I can actually serve more by doing this. And so good on you for that too. So if anybody wants to reach out to you to learn more about the Inspired Leader, or just to connect with you for other purposes, how would be the best way or means for them to do so?
I have a website. It's www.theinspiredleader.com. You can reach out on LinkedIn at Ali Stone, Instagram, Ali Stone __. I have an Inspired Leader business page on Facebook. So yeah, there's lots of places and lots of ways to reach out. And if you're interested, even just want to have a conversation, I'd love to hear from you. I love speaking with other entrepreneurs as well. So
Yeah.
thank you for having me. This is a great conversation.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. And for everybody who was watching today or listening today, if you're interested in checking out our archives, head over to amplifyyourbusiness.ca. That's where you're going to find all of our episodes, past and future. And if you prefer to listen to the audio version of this, then you can find us on all of the major podcasting platforms around the internet. So grab an app and search Amplify Your Business, and you'll be able to find us there. So until next time, everybody, have a prosperous day.